Hey everyone, welcome to my daily update video series where I'm walking you through day by day of building a $1 million a year business in public, sharing everything I learn along the way. In today's update, I want to go over the new Sonnet 4.5 model that launched today, how I approach debugging with AI tools, and what's new in App Launch Club. So I don't know if you saw today, but Anthropic announced their new model, Claude Sonnet 4.5. In the early benchmarks, they say that it is better at agentic coding than the previous Opus 4.1 version, and better at a whole, array of different tasks. I tested with this model a little bit today, and my first impression is that it's good. It's still very much an Anthropic model. We still get, you're absolutely right, when things are not going well. It's really fast though, which is really nice. It's pretty accurate, I would say, but it is much faster than GPT-5, for example. But there's nothing particularly that stands out about this model to me, just from a few hours of using it to code inside of Cursor. I have not yet tested it inside Claude Code. That's next on my list. I typically find that their models perform better in Claude Code than they do inside of Cursor, but really exciting to see this. I don't think we expected it for another few days, but they launched it today, and I'm going to be continuing testing that in the coming days and weeks. So pretty cool. To move to debugging with AI tools, I put out a tweet yesterday talking about a bug that I ran into for a freelance project that Claude just could not fix. And I've been working on this bug for weeks, and I brought it over to Codex, and Codex nailed it way quicker than Claude was even able to get close. And my friend Austin asked about hearing more about what the issue was and what the prompts were and some of these examples, because there are lots of bugs that we come across as developers that are really tough to track down, especially when we're using a lot of AI generated code. So I wanted to walk through a little bit how I approached that process and how I solved it. So the bug in this particular example was I have a custom scroll view for this freelance app, and I can't really show you the app, but I'll walk you through it. And so there's a custom scroll view, and basically the UX of it is that all the items start at the bottom, and the user is going to scroll up as a progression type kind of experience. And I am alternating the content that's shown in each basically page of this scroll view, where there's 4 items grouped together, and then you scroll up and it's a page of one single item, and that alternates back and forth. And so the bug that I was running into was that when I would tap on one of the items, it would navigate me to a new screen, but there'd be a really weird jitter in the scroll, and like it was trying to redraw and couldn't figure out how to lay out properly, and just had a really jarring experience in the app. Like the rest of the app was working fine, except for this really weird animation that I ran into. And because I'm doing so many custom things, I have a custom tab bar, a custom header in the app, a custom view for the scroll view. I'll show you just conceptually what this could look like. So we've got like a list of items, kind of like this. And then I would scroll up, and then it would bring me to a page that looks like this. So get rid of these. Okay, so this would be like page 2 of the scroll, right? And then I'd scroll between those back and forth, and then the just scroll would shake. And there's also a feature where it's like if I navigate to a new view and then go back, it should it does some calculation on what the scroll position should be. And it was getting stuck in between pages and couldn't figure out how to execute this in a smooth experience so you can go from one screen and back, and it behaves as you'd expect. And so in order to fix this, I did a ton of debugging of explaining the prompt to Claude Code. Now, basically typed something that was like, this is the issue I'm seeing. There's this really weird jitter in the scroll, and these are all the scenarios in which I encountered this. So it had context of what was happening. So I'll use a prompt kind of like this as an example. So I give it the context of what the bug is. So I said, in this case, I'm experiencing bug in my scroll view where there's a weird jitter every time I navigate away from the screen. It looks to me like the view is uncertain of its frame, that the frame appears as if it could be changing unexpectedly. So I want to give it context of what I'm seeing as the developer and what I suspect is potentially the source of the bug. And then I said, I want you to study my implementation of this feature and then give it a very detailed explanation of what your feature is and how it should be functioning so that it has like a baseline of what the expectation is when the code is compiled. And then I said, identify any issues with my implementation and find a more simple way to implement this without changing functionality. And then you could add something too, like my minimum deployment target is iOS 18, because that's what your model's going to be trained on at this point in time. And just give it a bunch of context when you're trying to debug this. Because what it's not going to do well if you just say, hey, there's this bug, please fix it. Like it's, especially for more complicated bugs, it's going to really struggle to understand what the real issue is, especially when you've got a lot of complex code going on. And so breaking it down into steps like this, where you're very descriptive of everything, the full context of the problem. So the feature, the functionality you expect, the UI that you expect, if you've got custom stuff going on, and anything that you should possibly suspect could be the root of this cause. And then I tell it to investigate and make a plan to solve or improve the feature. And this is essentially the prompt that I use inside of Codex and Claude Code, where Codex was able to actually solve the problem. And Claude Code really just went back and forth trying a bunch of different things. And it got me a little bit closer, but didn't end up actually solving it. And so this prompt didn't like one shot solve it. What it did is it got me like 90% closer to what the solve was. And then I saw something way more clearly and I was like, oh, I bet this is it. So I did like a border on the scroll view and I saw that it was being cut off weird. And so then I was able to give it more context. And I said, it looks like the height of the scroll view is changing and being miscalculated. And so when I was able to give it more context after we tried some things here, it was basically like, oh, I see the issue now. The calculation for the height of this view is off and being basically changed way too frequently. So that led me to the solution that Codex came up with and fixed it. So now the app is running like 10 times more smooth than it was before for stuff like this. So that's kind of how I approach like debugging with AI, is just load it with like so much context information. Give it everything you've tried, give it, all the debugging steps you've done, anything that you suspect could be causing it, and all this stuff. The other thing that's really helpful too is if you keep like a running list of attempted things. So like in Claude Code, you'll run into situations where you're going to run out of context. It's going to compact your conversation. Keep an eye on that, because before you do that, if you ask it to create a rules file for everything you've tried so far and what's worked and what hasn't, you can take that and bring it over to a new chat so it has context of what you're trying to do without it being compacted in a way that you're not aware of. And then you can also try it with other models such as Codex and have a way more descriptive prompt and starting point of that. The other thing I'll caution you against too is the sunken cost fallacy. So if you're debugging and you feel like you're getting closer, but you're at like 90% of your chat window limit, like don't just stay there because you've already spent so much time in the chat. Like ask it to summarize, ask it to basically give you the context of what you've done so you can start a new chat. Because sometimes all you need is a fresh context window and you'll be able to get going a lot more smooth. So let me know if you have any questions down below. I'd be happy to answer and get into more detail here. But this is essentially how I approach really difficult bugs in my iOS apps when it comes to using AI to help me on coding. So next, moving to the App Launch Club. So that's my community of builders where we actually use AI to ship apps and get something out the door in just 2 weeks. So new in App Launch Club is our weekly builders hour. So every week we have a live sync, basically just co-working session where we're all hanging out, working on our projects. You can come with any questions or bugs that you have for your app and get those answered there. And that happens every Sunday afternoon. So that we had our first one like last week. It went really well. It was really fun just to see what projects everyone's working on inside the community and just kind of share the struggles of indie development and things like that. It's really great about being part of a community. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out. It's a lot of fun, really nice to have someone to work with, especially on a quiet afternoon when you're probably working on your project anyway. It's good to hang out with other developers. Now I'm moving on to brand stats, which is where I just track different growth metrics that I'm focusing on at the moment as part of growing my business so that my process of building a $1 million a year business gets more efficient as time goes on. So right now I'm tracking my followers, YouTube channel subscribers, and community signups. And this just helps me know, like, is my content strategies working? Am I actively growing? Which results in more people in the community, more people seeing my apps, and so on. So we're at 882 followers for today, which is a loss of 1. My channel is still at 7 subscribers. And then there was no new signups for school today. So this is really nice to see too, because like as I go day by day, even if it's small growth, I can see that there is growth happening. And I can see, like, I check stuff like my analytics just to see that is my content, like, improving? Is my engagement improving? Is this a worthwhile endeavor, or should I pivot into something else with my time, kind of thing? So it's kind of how I approach this stuff. Just to give you an idea of why I do this, I'm not necessarily going for the followers, but I'm going for growth and distribution and building an audience. And followers, I feel like it's just a good metric to track that. So anyways, thanks for tuning into this video, and we will see you in the next one.